This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, today is December
16th. There we go. Go time.
Okay. Tape is running.
Yes, sir.
Today is December the 16th, the year 2020. Roll call, please.
Dan Wilkins,
Present.
David Smelser,
Here.
Blake Trisson,
Here.
Lane Lewis,
Present.
and President Dale Cox.
Yes. Let's all stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can everybody hear me? Is everybody on the audio?
I can hear you.
Okay, first item on the agenda, as always, is public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item not on the agenda, now is the time. Go ahead, Rochelle.
I have received public comment and submitted to the board several for your recommendation, and those have been submitted earlier this morning, and I have a few that have submitted their request to speak this morning via chat. First up is Tracy. Tracy, would you go ahead and make your public comment? You have 5 minutes.
Yes, good morning. My name is Tracy and I'm a current ratepayer. The recent organizational assessment proposed by TTSA is concerning, especially after reading about the violations. Now seems like the worst time to lay off laboratory staff, especially during a pandemic. My company utilizes TTSA's laboratory for presence-absence samples to be analyzed. These labs are a huge asset to our community, and we would like to continue making use of this benefit with certified lab staff. I know there are many others in the Truckee community that are growing increasingly concerned with how TTSA is being operated. Laying off experienced and professional lab staff is not the answer. We urge you, the board, to reconsider laying off lab staff. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tracy. Next, we have Lauren. Lauren, go ahead.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Tracy, Lauren, you have 5 minutes.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. I am speaking here today both as a concerned Truckee resident and someone with an academic and professional background in public sector management. I urge the board to reconsider its proposed plan that includes frontline layoffs in exchange for insulating middle management. Failures within public sector agencies are largely attributed to prioritizing these non-performing middle management positions and transposing the burden of outcome onto frontline individuals that carry these agencies on their shoulders. You currently employ an already limited staff of dedicated, experienced, and educated individuals who are passionate about the well-being of our community and our environment. The pandemic has had a devastating outcome for our community. The influx of mobile workers has siphoned our public resources, and the considerable interruption to tourism has left many taxpayers in an unreliable and unsustainable position. These few TTSA employees are the engine of your agency and keep our community moving forward. I would hope that at a time when it is most critical to protect talented workers, to protect the health of our citizens, and to protect the wellness of our environment, you would not weigh in favor of bureaucratic non-performance. It has been proven to fail time and time again. Thank you for your time.
Hey, Dale. Hey, Dale, this is Dan. Hey, I've got a process question. So I appreciate the public comment we're getting. It appears to be on an item that's on the agenda that's later in the agenda. My understanding is that this part of the meeting is for public comment related to items not on the agenda today.
Dan, you're absolutely correct. At this time, I'd like to direct Rochelle to direct the public comment to be any item not on the agenda.
Will do, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Okay, I have on the agenda or on the chat, I have Kristen, Jane Davis, and Seamus. If the three of you do not have a public comment related to any item on the agenda, would you like to make a public comment?
I still would like to make a public comment, please.
Okay, Kristen, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kristen Davis. I have been a TTSA laboratory employee for over 12 years now and counting. I'm here today to say how appreciative I am of all the other lab staff I work with. Right now, I am off for childcare reasons due to COVID, and I know the two other lab staff are bogged down and overworked right now with everything. But I thank them for all their hard work. Within the past year, we have been short-staffed, have dealt with shutdowns and a pandemic, still dealing with a pandemic, and yet we have kept up to date with all of our permit testing and all of our WDR requirements. There are proficiency tests that we as a lab have to perform every year in order to keep ELAP accreditation. I would like everyone to know we passed our PT testing this year, as every year prior, with flying colors, especially in a shortened amount of time due to the lab having to move out for the admin remodel, asbestos removal. I want to say thank you to my coworkers for all the hard work they have done and the respect they have shown me. I am proud to be part of such a wonderful and amazing team in the lab. And likewise, I would like to extend my appreciation and my thanks to all the other TTSA employees who help support the lab and the laboratory operations. Thank you.
Okay, and then Pippin, Karen, if you have comment related to agenda items, you can save those comment for those agenda items, or if you have a comment not related to those agenda items, you can speak now for public comment or reserve your comment for those agenda items.
I have a comment. My name's Seamus.
Okay, and it's not related to any agenda item, correct?
I heard you the first time, second time, yes. It's
Okay,
not.
go ahead.
My comment is directed generally at the overall efficiency of TTSA and what steps have been taken or have not been taken in the recent past to try to achieve that. Specifically, it appears, within the last year, that TTSA has seen fit to contract out to CH2M Hill, who I'm familiar with, contract amounts totaling over $400,000 for work to be done that I find astonishingly inefficient in terms of how TTSA views itself. On staff, if I'm not mistaken, TTSA has engineers in-house. Is that correct? Rochelle? That's just a simple yes or no. Or maybe LaRue.
So this is, my understanding, Dale, is this is an opportunity for public comment as opposed to question and answer.
It is comment. I'm just asking a simple question. It's just a yes or no. Nobody has any, so there's no engineers that work on the staff at TTSA.
It's public comment. It's not a question and answer
Okay.
session.
And let's go on with that. I would imagine that those engineers, hopefully at least one of them are PE. They're licensed within the state of California. So they have some kind of grounding in what they should be doing as an engineer. However, TTSA has seen fit to contract out engineering duties that could be done in-house. I find it ironic that that would be done at a time when you're going to sit there and try to minimize the number of staff in another part of your program that is really key to the ongoing daily operation of that system. So when you look at it, it's a contradiction in terms, and the board of directors right here have basically been yes men and haven't done their job in looking at what the heck TTSA is actually supposed to be doing, and if they can actually do it in-house before they go out and contract it out. I find that abysmal management, abysmal work by the board of directors, and especially I pointed Peak and Griffin as the ones who are really pointing the fingers at people that shouldn't be the ones to lose their jobs when we're sitting there and spending money, taxpayer money, in the amount of over $400,000 that could be done in-house, I believe. And if anybody wants to say something contrary to that, I sure would like to hear that. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. There's a Travis and Frank Smith. If you have a public comment not related to an agenda item and you'd like to speak.
Yes, this is Frank Smith.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
I'm a longtime resident of Taos City and have many acquaintances in the public sector. It is appalling to suggest to reduce laboratory staff for a stronger financial stewardship to its constituents, yet use that same ratepayer money to subcontract samples to outside labs and additional TNI transitional help. I urge you to continue operations with the current laboratory personnel. Excuse me, my phone just shut off. I urge you to continue operations with current laboratory personnel in a time where so many people and families are experiencing hardships. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, again, if anyone has public comment not related to an agenda item, I think a public comment.
I would like to make a public comment. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, can you state your name, please?
Yes, so my name is Autumn Garrido, and I have lived in Truckee for 20 years. I'm a small business owner in downtown Truckee and part of the Truckee Chamber of Commerce. I've been quietly paying attention to everything that's been going on at TTSA for the past year now, and I'm recently a first-time home buyer and ratepayer. I'm extremely concerned with the recent events. As a member of the public, I can speak for the ones when I say I want a well-equipped lab staff testing our waters, as I am also a fly fisher in the Truckee River and Pyramid Lake. The idea that TTSA will lay off lab staff to do good by the ratepayer months after management giving themselves raises is laughable. As a ratepayer, I'd like to see a well-staffed laboratory and take any precautions that need to be done to make that happen, to protect our community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think, again,
This is Pippin.
Okay, Pippin, again, I'd like to remind you that if you have a comment not related to any agenda item, the last two speakers did address an item on the agenda related to lab staff. Okay, go ahead.
Great, I understand that, and I'll try to walk that line for Dan. My name is Pippin Mader, and as always, I want to start out by saying I gain nothing from being here, and I only continue to comment because I feel it is my civic duty to speak up when I see problems of the magnitude occurring at TTSA. I want to talk a little bit about my concerns that whenever issues related to TTSA get decided by outside entities, they don't seem to go TTSA's way. I have three specific examples. The first being that back to this spring, the judges found that retaliation existed against one of their employees in this PERB case, and TTSA has chosen to do nothing about this. No changes have been made, or at least nothing in the public that the public can see. And the person who is specifically named in the ruling has since been pushed out. Second, I want to bring up the ELAP notice of violation. TTSA has been found to be in violation of their lab certification because management has been found to be interfering with lab staff. That's a State Water Board, ELAP provided that letter. And in that letter, it includes requirements that TTSA develop a document that says the laboratory director will supervise all personnel employed in the lab, and a policy laboratory management and all personnel who work in the laboratory are free from any undue internal or external influences that may adversely affect the quality of their work. To me, those two statements are pretty shocking. That implies that that hasn't been what's been happening, which brings into question the integrity of management and the lab results. Then I want to talk a little bit about the Carollo report that was presented and adopted last month. I'm pretty concerned that when I've looked at it in more detail, that the numbers don't appear to make sense. If you read the report, and I have read the report, it essentially says that it actually says that the lab need 3.3 staff, not the 2.6. And then in a different section, it actually says that they need an additional 1 staff for TNI. And so I would, I guess so Dale, I hear you, but I guess this is regarding the report that was occurred last month, not the action being taken about it this month.
This is an agenda item, Pippin. You can sit back and save your comments when we start addressing the Carollo report.
Okay, so I'll just wrap up with the things that don't relate to that. Thanks for that clarification. I want to make sure that compliance is TTSA's #1 priority. I want to make sure that from my perspective, that they need to be really careful and aware and paying attention to current compliance requirements and what the future may include, including NPPS permit requirements. And once they have a history of compliance, then other action may be taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Pippin. And last for public comment, I have Aaron Carlson.
Hi, my name is Aaron Carlson. I'm the licensed civil engineer here on staff at TTSA. I wanted to address a small fraction or comments coming from a small fraction using secondhand information and half-truths to try to show that TTSA is spinning out of control. And the only way to fix that is to remove our general manager. TTSA is not spinning out of control, and because of strong leadership and teamwork, TTSA is on a solid foundation to meet the needs of staff, our community, and protect our environment. Recently, TTSA undertook a very ambitious project, the rehabilitation of our administration building. This immense project involved relocating everyone and everything out of a 9,800 square foot area, storing all these items, setting up temporary offices, and moving it all back in over an 8-week span. In total, approximately 70% of TTSA staff was directly impacted. We accomplished this with little to no disruption to our everyday operations. This is because of superior leadership, well thought out planning, well thought out project planning, and teamwork. I want to emphasize this last point, teamwork. Completion of this project clearly shows that we are working together, planning together, and sharing our success together. This is just one project TTSA has recently completed. There are more projects to come. TTSA clearly demonstrated that what we can accomplish by working together as a team. The successful completion of this project clearly shows that our board, general manager, TTSA management, and staff are up to the challenge of providing our community with safe, quality service for our customers, community, and our environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, and let's see. I have Robin Redmond. If you have a public comment not related to any agenda items, if you'd like to speak.
Good morning. I do have a item that I would like to speak about that is not related to an agenda item, I believe. I would like to speak to the employee morale at TTSA and the term of disgruntled employees. I personally know of approximately 15, just written them down and counted them out, 15 people, employees at TTSA that I could say would be described as, unhappy with the way that they are treated and described as disgruntled. 15 employees out of the total number of employees that you have right now, not including management. The total number is 46. I believe management, there's approximately 5, but 41 employees. And I can say 15 is not just a handful of employees. It's a good portion. And I always ask myself why this is. And so I am here today to give you my personal experience. And I don't know if you recognize the name, but I am Jim Redmond's wife. Jim Redmond has been an employee at TTSA for over 15 years, has contributed quite a lot, I believe, over his time with TTSA working for the maintenance department. I would like to describe a specific incident that happened to Jim that I believe is part of the reason why employees that have been mentioned feel like they are retaliated against for speaking their mind and disagreeing possibly with management. And then also I'd like to comment back on that over the 15 years that Jim has been there, it has not always been like this. For 10 years, it was a great place. Jim enjoyed working there and enjoyed going to work every day. Anyway, I would like to describe a situation that happened to Jim not too long ago while he was working on a project. Another employee that works for TTSA, we don't know who the employee is, but obviously it was someone that could see what he was doing. And this employee decided that he would take a picture of Jim while he was doing his job, standing or doing something on a ladder. Took a picture without his knowledge or without his permission, which I think in itself is kind of creepy and odd and just wrong. And then took that picture into the safety manager, safety director, whatever his title is, and basically said, look what I see. Look what's happened. Look what's happening. We can write him up. We can do something about this. And what did the safety person do? Did he walk out and take this as a learning moment and a moment to work on employee morale and everything? Did he go out and say, hey, Jim, what the hell are you doing? That could be dangerous. Can I help you? Can I assist you? Can we look at a different way to do this? Can we find a different piece of equipment that you can use? No, none of that occurred. He went to his supervisor and said, we need to write him up. And so that is exactly what happened. Jim got written up and was forced to sign a write-up that stated that he had been given a ladder safety instruction. This ladder safety instruction was an online video of,
I'm sorry, Robin, you have 1 more minute left.
Okay, I'll wrap it up here in just a moment. Anyway, so Jim took the write-up, and I can tell you that he learned a lot about core values that day. He learned a lot about how employees are treated, and he learned nothing about ladder safety. And yeah, I don't understand the philosophy. Maybe you want people to quit. Maybe you want them to take early retirement. Maybe you want them to go out on disability. I don't know, but this is how employees feel like if they, they're going to be walking around a corner and someone's going to snap a picture of them doing their job or run to their supervisor and report that they're doing something incorrect. And that's a target, and that's intimidation, and that's how these employees feel. And I feel like that this is coming from the top, and as a board of directors, it's your responsibility to make a change and do something for the morale and a good portion, 35% of your employees who work for you at TTUSA. Thank you for the time. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, that's all I have, Director Cox. At this time, there are no other, no one else has asked to make public comment.
Okay, thank you, Rochelle.
Hey, Dale.
Go ahead.
So just a couple of follow-up question for staff based on public comments. So there were some questions regarding engineering staff and why we hire contract consultants. I was hoping LaRue could provide some information on that question.
Sure. We did have discussion on the support for engineering services. I suppose the discussion that they're talking about is the master plan. The agency currently takes on sufficient amounts of work already, which keeps which keeps our engineering staff well occupied and busy. We often use engineering services support for their expertise, for their ideas, and to support us in this fashion. When we did this, we did make the determination that it was best for the agency to go out with the plan. In other areas that the agency does not have expertise at this time. If there's anything you'd like to add on, you're more welcome to speak.
Yeah, that's correct. Engineers are required to operate within their discipline. And if there's any engineering expertise, like complex areas outside of their expertise, we are required by law to gain that through outside, through somebody else. So we have certain projects, especially the more complex ones that are multidisciplinary. And those, it's in the best interest of the agency to outsource those types of projects.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can we move along? The consent agenda items 1 through 4. I'd like to take the approval of the minutes independently of the consent agenda items. If everyone has had a chance to review the minutes of the November the 18th, 2020 meeting, and they find these minutes in order, I'd like them to be entered into the record independently of the consent agenda item. Everybody has had a chance to review item 1 of the consent agenda. Any additions or alterations? Anyone? I'll ask for a motion to approve item number 1 of the consent agenda, the minutes of the November 18th, 2020 meeting. Need a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve the.
Need a second?
Grable, second.
Seconded by Smeltzer. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smeltzer,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
The final 3 items on the consent agenda If everyone has had a chance to review the general fund, the financial statements, and the progress payment for the administration remodel, if they find all of these items in order, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I move approval.
It's
I'll
been
second.
moved by White, seconded by Wilkins. All in favor, roll call, please.
Director Wilkins?
Yes, but question though, did we take public comment on the consent agenda?
No, I did not. Any comments from the public or staff on the consent agenda items? Seeing none
This is
and
Pippin.
hearing none.
This is Pippin. I just want to point out my name is misspelled.
Okay, let's see.
It's not a big deal. It's a clerical thing. It's not a big deal.
Need a motion to approve, first by Blake, seconded by Wilkins. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins?
Yes.
Director Smelser?
Yes.
Director Tresson?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
And President Cox?
Yes.
Motion approved. And I'll take care of that, Pippin.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the report from the November 18th, 2020 closed session meeting.
President Cox, at the closed session discussion of the November 18, 2020 meeting, the meeting was adjourned without providing a report from closed session or report of closed session discussion is to be provided. There was no action taken after closed session.
Questions or comments on the closed session? Anyone? Directors? Moving ahead, discussion of staff recommendations on the organizational assessment recommendation. Item number 2.
Thank you very much, President Cox. I will address the staff report for item 2, which is the discussion of staff recommendations on the organizational assessment recommendations. At the November 2020 Board of Directors meeting, Corolla Engineers provided a PowerPoint presentation on the organizational assessment, summary of findings and recommendation. During that meeting, there was direction to staff to assess and review the organizational assessment and return to the board with recommendations on whether the recommendations provided by Corolla were merited and should be implemented. So what we have here is a staff report to address that. Before I get into that, I wanted to address some of the attachments that are part of the staff report. We have a spreadsheet, which is a summary of all the recommendations and its reference to the organizational assessment. As you can see in the spreadsheet, there's the subject, which ties back to the organizational assessment. I'll refer to that as the OAA periodically. It includes section 5.1.1, laboratory staff options, 5.2, 5.3, 6, and 7. I'll go into greater detail with that soon. In the spreadsheet, there's an item number which references the quantity of recommendations or alternatives presented in the report. And
LaRue, what page is that spreadsheet on?
It's on the end of the report, on the end of the staff meeting of the staff report. I do not have a reference on it electronically. Let me do a quick check here. Bear with me, please.
LaRue, is it figure A1? Is that what you're referring to?
I do not recall if it's tagged, but
LaRue, it's page 46. LaRue, page 46 of the electronic report.
Thank you. Going back to the discussion on the spreadsheet, there's an identification on which department is the recommendations are applicable to, and what TTSA management staff have determined as a recommendation. Additionally, as the second attachment, it is the organizational assessment. That the staff write-up is deals with summaries and points, similar to the spreadsheet. Those that were interested, I put the report in there so they could cross-reference back into it to find out further information. So with that, I'd like to get into more details with the staff report. The organizational provides 5 recommendations or suggestions. First one is section 5.1.1, laboratory staff options. 5.2, staffing organizational recommendations. 5.3, OEM staff recommendations. Section 6, programmatic development suggestions. 7, contracting services options. I would like to be noted that Corolla did make recommendations for sections 5.2, 5.3, 6, and 7. When it came to the staffing recommendations, what they did was they provided alternatives for the agency to analyze and to choose which alternative would be best for their operations. So moving on to section 5.1, laboratory staff options. Corolla identified that the appropriate staffing for the laboratory is 2.6 full-time equivalents, also known as FTE. And FTE equates to a full-time employee. Currently, the laboratory staffing consists of 3 chemists, currently 1 chemist 2 and 2 chemist 3s. The agency's laboratory director classification remains vacant. I wanted to provide clarification to the term laboratory director. There are 2 applications of this. One is for the full supervisory role for the laboratory director as defined in our classification description. And it gives them, like I said, full superior supervisory responsibility to include training, evaluation, and discipline of staff. The other application of the laboratory director term is applied for those filling in the capacity of accreditation purposes, meaning compliance with ELAP. That is being fulfilled and can be fulfilled through the positions of the chemist. So, in the report, the 3 alternatives provided by Corolla include alternative 1, which is to maintain the current staffing of 3 personnel. Although this alternative contemplates maintaining staffing of 3, it contemplates that the staffing would consist of a lab director and 2 chemists. The chemist classifications would be a chemist 2 or a chemist 3. The laboratory director classification would include full supervisory responsibilities, including the current agency laboratory director classification description, including responsibilities for training, evaluation, and discipline of lab staff. This alternative does not contemplate the use of wastewater treatment plant operators to support laboratory sample analysis. Alternative 2 in the report has 2 full-time laboratory staff. This alternative provides for a laboratory director and a chemist 3. Similar to alternative 1, the laboratory director classification would include full supervisory responsibilities. Wastewater treatment operators would provide support in laboratory sample analysis. The third alternative provided by the Corolla report is 1 laboratory staff and contracted sample analysis. This alternative contemplates a chemist 3 serving in the capacity of a laboratory director for laboratory accreditation, meaning compliance, reporting, quality control, etc. The majority of the sampling analysis would be contracted to the NELAG Institute, also known as the TNI Certified Laboratory, and the wastewater treatment plant operators would provide support in laboratory sample analysis. So when the agency met, we met management and appropriate leadership team members. We met and looked at alternatives and scenarios. And in our analysis, we came up with 4 primary groups for the evaluation, and they are: 1, how do the alternatives align with the agency's mission statement to operate and maintain the wastewater treatment plant and related facilities in a sound, efficient, and effective manner? 2, compliance with sampling requirements of the agency waste discharge requirement order. 3, the ability to best utilize staffing to meet the agency's waste discharge requirement order, meaning how can we accommodate personal leaves, have redundancy, and provide coverage and flexibility for staff. And 4, responsible financial stewardship to the agency's constituents. In summary, we evaluated the operational and economic impacts of the alternatives. It should be noted the agency did consider to comply with the TNI standards by late 2023. This consideration is viewed as a short-term need. The agency's analysis is focused on the laboratory staffing needs for the long-term period, and the agency does plan to utilize a certified third-party laboratory as needed during this transition from ELAP to TNI accreditation. Under alternatives 2 and 3, the agency would likely need to use the services of a consultant to assist in the update of the T&I standards. Excuse me. So the lab staff could focus on testing responsibilities. And under alternative 1, the lab staffing levels should be sufficient to enable the agency to update the T&I standards with little assistance from a consultant. An additional consideration to staffing was that the current laboratory director for ELAB purposes has informed management that the current temporary laboratory staffing of the 2 chemists, with one being utilized as the laboratory director for ELAB purposes, is sufficient to maintain the current sampling analysis to meet the agency waste discharge requirement order, to update and maintain the needed documentation for ELAB accreditation requirements, and to continue training wastewater treatment plant operators with minimal additional staff effort. When staff analyzed alternative 1, by maintaining the current staffing levels and practices, the agency can operate and maintain the plant in a sound, efficient, and effective manner, as well as comply with the waste discharge requirement order. The multiple staff would accommodate staffing schedules, meaning vacation leaves and sick leaves. However, the agency would be overstaffed because this alternative would result in at least 3 FTEs rather than the 2.6 as identified in the Corolla report. In addition, operationally, the agency needs a laboratory director with full supervisory responsibilities to perform necessary lab training, develop policies and procedures to supervise the lab staff if there is more than one single lab staff member. As a result, unless one of the existing chemists qualifies for and is selected for the laboratory director position, this alternative would likely result in the elimination of 1 chemist position. Alternative 1 is also the least financially prudent alternative with an estimated annual operating cost of approximately $740,000. As to analysts, the analysis of alternative 2, this alternative contemplates a reduction of current staffing from 3 laboratory staff to 2 laboratory staff and supplementing the remaining 0.6 FTE with wastewater treatment plant operators. The staffing alternative would still enable agency to operate and maintain the plant in a sound, efficient, and effective manner, and this alternative would be more financially efficient as it does not exceed the required 2.6 FTEs. The wastewater treatment plant operators would be more involved in the treatment process as they would be more directly involved in the sampling analysis. The laboratory would be able to maintain and meet the sampling requirements of the agency waste discharge requirement order, and the laboratory staff, along with wastewater treatment operators, would accommodate staffing schedules, again, vacation leaves and sick leaves. The agency would utilize current certified third-party laboratories to assist in sampling analysis if needed. Alternative 2 is more financially prudent than alternative 1, with an estimated annual operating cost of $615,000. However, this alternative would likely result in the layoff of lab staff. As set forth above, and for the alternative 1, the agency needs a laboratory director with full supervisory responsibilities if there is more than 1 laboratory staff member. If one of the existing chemists is qualified and selected for the laboratory director position, the agency will need to lay off fewer lab staff. As to the analysis of alternative 3, this alternative proposes the agency reduces current staffing from 3 laboratory staff to 1 laboratory staff and supplement the majority of the sampling analysis to a certified third-party laboratory while utilizing wastewater treatment plant operators for sample analysis support. The agency can still operate and maintain the plant in a sound, efficient, and effective manner. The laboratory would be able to maintain and meet the sampling requirements of the agency waste discharge requirement order through the use of laboratory staff, wastewater treatment plant operators, and a certified third-party laboratory. This alternative is most financially prudent than alternatives 1 and 2, with an estimated annual cost of approximately $464,000 a year. However, this alternative has operational disadvantages because it limits the agency's ability to perform immediate analysis if the single laboratory staff is occupied or on leave. The agency prefers to have at least 1 additional chemist to provide flexibility and some level of redundancy. Alternative 3 would also result in the most layoffs of lab staff. The agency's recommendation is alternative 2, which is a lab director with complete supervisory responsibilities and a chemist. The agency believes any chemist classification, whether 1, 2, or 3 in the chemist series, is able to perform the required sampling analysis to support the laboratory director and agency. The wastewater treatment plant operators would provide additional support along with an outside third-party certified laboratory when needed. As the agency is able to meet the sampling requirements with any of these 3 alternatives, the distinguishing preferences Or alternative 2 are the agency's ability to better operate and maintain the wastewater treatment plant and related facilities in a sound, efficient, and effective manner, and stronger financial stewardship to its constituents, without compromising the ability to meet the agency's waste discharge requirement order. It should be noted with discussion with Carollo Engineering, they too recommended alternative 2. Moving on to section 5.2, staffing and organizational recommendations. The organizational staff provided the following recommendations related to staffing alternatives, prioritized in the report with suggested urgency based on their interviews with staff, its observation and industry trends or standards. The first is there are 12 of them. I'll read them through briefly. Optimize lab services staffing with support of operations staff. Create a CMS GIS position. Assess IT organization and staffing as part of the IT SCADA master plan. Create an executive secretary board clerk position. Eliminate the customer service supervisor position and one administrative assistant position. Create an accounting technician position. Create a new associate assistant engineer position. Modify administration manager job description to include more robust financial qualifications. Right size the mechanic and E&I staff accounts based on the CMS data. Add third-party owners advisor management to engineering manager's workload. Modify the senior engineer's job responsibilities. And lastly, evaluate means to change to unmanned operations. The agency management and appropriate leadership team members did meet and went through all of their recommendations and agreed that all are valid and merited, with the exception of number 10, which is to add third-party owners advisor management and engineering's workload. The agency believes that the current engineering manager is able to manage the workloads with projected addition of the additional engineering staff and the support of numerous engineering firms utilized on an as-needed basis. However, the agency will monitor the workload and revisit this recommendation should it be applicable in the future. Moving to 5.3, operation and maintenance staff development recommendations. The OA recommendations are submitted to more comprehensively achieve the mission statement goals of 1, to operate and maintain the wastewater treatment plant and related facilities in a sound, efficient, and effective manner, and 2, maintain a workplace that fosters professional growth and job satisfaction. There are 8 recommendations broken up into 2 categories, operations and maintenance. For the operations, the 3 recommendations are to conduct process optimization discussions with all operations staff frequently, improve process performance indicators, tracking, and feedback methods, add written objectives and criteria to on-the-job training for OITs, operators, and trainings. For the remaining 5 recommendations applicable to the maintenance, it is also due to conduct optimization discussions with all maintenance staff frequently, refine maintenance performance indicators, tracking, and feedback methods, add written objectives and criteria to on-the-job training for crafts, use the most skilled craftsmen to train others on specific learning domains, and obtain CMS implementation support. Again, management and the leadership team, applicable leadership team members have reviewed each of those recommendations and feel that all of them are valid and merited recommendations. The agency recommends the implementation of each of those recommendations and will do so as available. Moving to the next set of suggestions for section 6, programmatic development suggestions. There are 10 recommendations and they're broken down in 2 groups: strategic growth and efficiency and risk. Again, I'll list them out. For strategic growth, they include increased performance-based focus, hire a third-party consultant to develop an IT SCADA master plan, develop standard workflows and procedures, evaluate the time required to complete basic workload for each job category. For efficiency and risk, they include evaluate the laboratory's current documentation and processes against the 2023 T&I standards, integrate Lucity CMMS into daily use, improve SCADA and instrumentation comprehensiveness, conduct a cybersecurity evaluation, evaluate site security, and to create an online GIS system. Again, management staff and the appropriate leadership team did meet and review each of these suggestions, and we all agree that all are valid and merited suggestions. The agency recommendation is to implement all the recommendations set forth by Carollo, and will do so as available. Lastly, the recommendations are for section 7, contracted services options. These are recommendations that would still require the agency staff to manage the contracts and monitor the work of consultants and contractors. And they include 3 recommendations. The first is process and compliance laboratory analysis, which is a reference from the organizational assessment, specifically Appendix A, where it lists specific tests. Secondly, systems administration and integration. And thirdly, engineering support. Again, management staff and the appropriate leadership team members have reviewed each of the contracted services options and agreed that all are valid and merited points are merited options to be considered and implemented. The agency recommends implementation of all the suggestions as needed. So in closing, the summary is on the spreadsheet, which gives a quick reference as to which recommendations are provided by Parolo and how the agency feels, how the recommendations are valid and merited and should be implemented. With that, I can take any questions from the board of directors.
At this time, we'll allow the board of directors to ask LaRue any questions that they have on what LaRue has just gone over. Blake, you can go first. Any questions, any comments?
Thanks, Dale. Thank you, LaRue, for going over that. That was a large list there. Just a point of, procedure. Are we going to address those by their category in terms of, are you looking for board action on the entire lot at one time, or are we going to try and address these by topic?
This is not an action item. The main recommendations that require board action include staffing, meaning levels of staffing, new positions, job descriptions, and organizational assessment. There are some other ones here that would require board action in the future, such as an IT SCADA master plan. That would be brought up to the board as that scope is prepared. All these other items do not require board action right now. They're more of just a summary of how we feel about it. So the only thing I'm looking for and staff are looking for are your recommendations and approvals of changes to the staffing and the organizational assessment. If you'd like to go one by one through them, we can as well, but that was not the intent today.
It seems to me that we should address those. If those are looking for action on each of those, that perhaps we address them point by point, just so we can have a focused discussion as opposed to doing all that. And so, in the order of items there, the first one was regarding you're looking for recommendation on the laboratory staffing. And so with regards to that specific item, while I appreciate the efforts of management to, try and find the right level of staffing and save the agency money and be prudent with our public funds, I am not in favor of recommendation number one of alternative two, and even have concerns about alternative one. There's been, Carollo's estimated the lab workload at 2.6 FTEs. I think for an agency that is responsible for maintaining a biological and chemical system with capital facilities over $100 million in fixed assets, that it makes sense for us to, if we have 2.6 FTEs of lab work, 3 laboratory personnel seems like a better number than 2 in supplementing with the operators. I encourage staff to utilize operators for non-regulatory compliance testing, but I think given the importance of our mission in protecting the public health and safety in the environment, that we should have chemists perform regulatory compliance testing. I think that there's a greater community benefit in having a lab, a fully staffed lab. We had at least one person from the public mention that they use TTSA. I don't know what nature that was. They didn't explain that. I know TSD, our agency, uses the TTSA lab infrequently, but at times when there are issues with our system, and it would be good to have a fully staffed lab for that. You know, historically, even alternative one with 3 staff is a reduction in our current staffing. I know that management looked at the tests that were being done that apparently necessitated 4 staff members, and a lot of them had to do with non-regulatory compliance testing, having to do with operational efficiency, which I think is a good thing to do, and we should maintain staffing to be able to monitor our system. I guess in the past, we had a lot of needs for non-regulatory compliance testing just to see what was going on with the plant. And there's even Carollo indicates in their report that, you know, that there's often a need for that as the processes change. We may need additional testing beyond just our regulatory compliance testing to conduct that work. And, you know, the plant thankfully operates really well, thanks to well-trained operators and staff, but things can go out of whack in a biological and chemical system, and that sometimes necessitates additional testing above and beyond just the bare minimum to achieve regulatory compliance. And I wouldn't want to have the laboratory unprepared to provide that information back to the operators to make sure that we can quickly get back into compliance. Bear with me as I go through my notes. So I guess, you know, for the other board members, you know, I am not comfortable with staff's recommendation to go with alternative 2. Again, there's been questions raised about the FTE calculation and whether that included the time necessary for a lab director as well. I think that the potential $100,000 in savings is not worth reducing our laboratory functionality and bear with me again, going through my notes, which are kind of a scribble here. I don't know, I'll have a chance to hopefully say more if I, at that point, but those are my comments at this point.
Okay, go ahead, Lane, you're next.
Okay, you know, we have issues. I mean, my whole thing is compliance and accountability. LaRue, you are the captain of the ship. Are you saying that with these changes made, that accountability and compliance on issues regarding the lab can be met by those recommendations you are making for this?
Yes, I believe we are able to meet the requirements for WDR under alternative 2. Yes.
Because if it's not, we need to change. You know, the responsibility of the board here is to set policy. You're the one that's guiding the ship, and if we get off course here, you're the one that's being responsible for that. If these changes take place and they don't work.
I do understand that. Yes.
Okay. Another issue I have is that we need to go out. I mean, I'm looking at with the issues with the lab right now, we need to hire or either within or outside, a laboratory make a laboratory director and go and find the person and give them the responsibilities, whether we have them in-house or we have them outside. I was critical before when the last time we went for a general manager and the board did not want to go outside. And it wasn't in a acceptable position by the rest of the board, and they went inside. We never knew if we got the best candidate for the job. It's not fair for the person that's in-house as well if that person's selected, and it's not fair to the public as a whole. I'm not suggesting that at this point that we do any layoffs. What we do is go out and go search, go within the district and outside advertising, and get a director, lab director with the responsibilities to go forward, and then make a decision as far as staffing after that period of time. Then let the agency make the difference in staffing at that time. That's, looking at everything. And as I say, I mean, it's let's get that person on board. Let's be proactive, not reactive, as far as a lab director, and go with that person and move forward with compliance and accountability in that lab. We cannot continue on the way we're working it right now. We have issues that haven't been resolved. We need to get those issues straightened out. And I believe it's up to you to straighten them out, LaRue. So I'll defer to the rest of the board right at this point.
Okay, thanks, Lane. Dan, what do you think?
So LaRue, I've got a question. So the Carrillo report identified, 2.6 FTEs as being their opinion as to the amount of basically person hours necessary to operate the lab function. And then there's this concurrent topic which plays into the conversation about the TNI standards that our current lab will need to be transitioning to over the next, I think, within the next 2.5 or 3 years. So my understanding there is that what the TNI requirements are, we'll need to go through, update our standard operating practices, update a significant amount of the documentation regarding how we do our compliance testing in a systematic fashion, and that's going to require some body of work, either by lab staff if we choose to do it in-house, or a combination of lab staff with consultant assistance. So one of the things I'd like to hear from LaRue is how you would see that occurring in both option 1 and option 2. So option 1, if we hold on to our current staffing level of 3 individuals, what would it look like over the next couple of years to transition to the TNI standard, versus if we end up with only 2 staff members in the lab, what does that transition to TNI look like over the next 2 to 3 years?
I'll answer that. I'll start with alternative 1. With alternative 1 remaining with 3 staff, we do foresee that it'll require minimal assistance of a consultant to assist to go over to the TNI accreditation component. We have spoken to ELAP, and they've stated they can provide documentation for us to make that transition easier for staff. So with alternative 1, we would view 1 staff member dedicating their time for that transition, while the other 2 staffers would be performing the test to keep us compliant with WDR. Going over to alternative 2, we would probably recruit the services of outside consultants to assist us with that. Still have a staff be dedicated towards that T&I accreditation and supplement any shortcomings for testing with an outside lab staff, with an outside certified laboratory. Do you have any input to add to that, Michael?
Okay, so
sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that is correct. With between the two alternatives, 1 and 2, that is what we foresaw after several conversations, meetings, discussions. How that would work is that we would utilize outside assistance if needed to make sure we met our requirements for the 2023 deadline for TNI. The one thing is that for alternative number 1, that would not be necessarily a full-time position of doing TNI for the next 3 years. We anticipate it would be less time than that if it was one person dedicated to working on that.
So with alternative 1, with either alternative 1 or alternative 2, we backfill the lab director position, which is currently vacant. And I understand that the nuance. We've got a laboratory director who has technical charge of the lab for purposes of maintaining our eLab certification, which is slightly different than a lab director who has full supervisory responsibility of all staff within the lab. And there's a nuance there that could be confusing, but that's my understanding is that's we've had a lot of input from Carl Davis on that question of, well, you're saying lab director on one hand, but not lab director on the other hand. What's the difference? My understanding is the difference is the level of supervision exercised over other staff. So coming back to TNI, so my understanding is that in either scenario, 1 or 2, we would have a lab director who would have responsibility for the lab and the staff within it, making sure that the standard operating practices are meeting the requirements of the state, making sure that the staffing is properly, the staff members are properly trained and able to perform the necessary tasks, et cetera. So with alternative 1, we would either hire or promote from within, create the lab director position. That person would be responsible for getting the transition to the TNI standards to occur. The bulk of that effort would happen in-house because we think under that scenario, we would have the resources to do it in-house. With alternative 2, we would do that same thing with the lab director in terms of hiring or promoting from within the lab director. We would lose a lab staff person, and then while we're doing the TNI transition, we would potentially be hiring a third-party lab to do some of the day-to-day testing so that the 2 remaining personnel would have adequate time to make the transition to TNI occur. Am I understanding that properly?
Yes, you are, Dan.
Okay, that's helpful. So then, from there, it becomes kind of a, it gets down to the next level of, the ability for, I think the scenario that creates the least kind of disruption to the existing workforce is scenario 1. And then the question becomes, in that scenario, so if within scenario 1, one of the existing, there's 2 sub options there, right? One is an existing person gets a promotion, the other 2 individuals then work for that person, and then we move forward, we do the TNI transition, and then we keep all of the laboratory activities in-house. There's a sub option there where one of the existing internal personnel, maybe no one applies for the position, or maybe one of the existing personnel does not end up being the most qualified for the position. Then we end up with a new lab director, and then we would have one staff person more in the lab than what the organizational assessment would suggest is necessary for TTSA. And then at that point, we would need to figure out what to do. And one option is to do a layoff. Another option is to see if there's an opportunity to reassign that person elsewhere within the organization to avoid the need for a layoff. So do I have the sub options on alternative one clear in my mind, LaRue?
Yes, you do, Dan. That is correct.
Okay, so that's a fair assessment of how that would work. Okay. And then in alternative two, similar set of circumstances, we would recruit for the lab director position. We either promote from within or someone comes in from the outside. At that point, we would have two positions more than we've decided that we want. If we decide we're looking for two positions in the lab, and then we would need to either look at a layoff in those positions or a reassignment or some combination of the above. And then I think I want to kind of go back to Lane's comment. I think what I heard you say, Lane, was maybe we should go out for the lab director recruitment process, see what happens through that process, whether we end up with an internal promotion or whether we end up with someone from outside of the organization, and then evaluate at that time what's the best direction to move forward with setting the staffing properly and looking at reassignments versus other options. Is that what you were suggesting, Lane?
That's what I was suggesting, and I wouldn't make any move with personnel within the lab till that director is in place, and then make decisions. Who knows? We don't know if we get the right person in that job, whether it be somebody in-house or outside, may have different ideas on how to run the lab, and say may need 4 people, may need 3 people, but let's have that expertise there and between staff and lab director and make that decision at that time. Don't do it now. So let's get, my thing is, let's get a lab director that we're all behind, and I'm encouraging everybody in the lab, to apply for that job, and let's go from there. Once that lab director is hired, let staff and the lab director come back to us and tell us what the FTEs are required for that job after that evaluation. That's where I'm at.
Okay, I don't have any additional questions at this time, Dale.
Okay, I'd like to add to what Lane has said, what you have said, Dan. It's very obvious to me that what's going on within the laboratory is not working. We have a lot of things going on in the lab that is throwing up red flags for me, that SOPs are not being met. There's been anomalies in the testing. We have problems with accountability, and we have to make some changes. And those changes, and I agree with you, Lane, have to be done from the general manager, and LaRue moving this assessment forward. It's going to be up to you to get this lab straightened out. We cannot, as an organization, continue on going through what we've been going through over the last several months and it's spilled over into the member districts. It's causing chaos within the member districts, and this has to stop, LaRue. You are the man that is in charge of this operation, and it's going to be up to you to get this straightened out. Now, I agree with what Lane has to say. It would be ideal to have a lab director position fulfilled from within, but whatever it takes to get accountability in that lab is our main focus. And my main focus as a director is to see to it that we are in compliance, not only with our WDR, but with all of our operating procedures within that lab. And we have to have a lab director in place that will be accountable for the TNI transition, that will hold us to a high standard within the agency and within the industry. And we cannot allow this to continue the way it is right now. And the staff recommends, and I would assume that it's you, LaRue, and Mike, and the rest of the operational staff, that alternative 2 would work, and it would be something that would swing our laboratory into compliance, both with operational and with our WDR. And LaRue, you're the responsible person with this decision and with this way this is headed. And you're going to be the one accountable for what's going on here.
I understand.
And, you know, we've sat back and listened to public comment. We've listened to concerned citizens about where this operation is going. We've heard about the discontent within the operation of employees. And LaRue, it's going to be up to you to get this turned around. And I know Lane is in the same position. You know, Dan and I have gone to several meetings on the ad hoc committee discussing what's going to be best for the agency. Carrillo is kind of leaning towards number 2. The staff is recommending number 2 scenario. And once again, LaRue, this is in your lap. And you are going to have to be held accountable for making this lab turn around, getting harmony within the lab, and making sure that we have a laboratory that can make the transition to TNI without any anomalies. And we have to make sure that the Lahontan Regional Water Control Board looks at us as up and shining operation. And right now, the way I view it, there is doubt within Lahontan and ELAP whether or not we're doing our job as effectively and as efficiently as possible. And you got to turn this around.
I accept full responsibility for the decision and the recommendation through the discussion we've had with staff. The alternatives were reviewed and analyzed. I understand that there are staff that are unhappy, but that was not a basis or consideration of this decision, of this recommendation. The requirements that we used for the analysis and the recommendation are based on the 4 that I listed before. So I do understand your position, and I do feel and support staff that alternative 2 is the right recommendation.
Okay, I want to hear from David Smeltzer. What is your take on this, David?
Yes. Well, not pretending to know how the lab works and all the ins and outs of it, but I am viewing this as we have problems here. There seems to me, with what's come down from the State Water Board and all the things I'm hearing, that there's problems. So reducing the staff, to me, you know, option 2 is not a good idea at this point. I mean, we can do this down the road and say, okay, this doesn't work, and we can change things later. But I'm thinking that we get a lab director and put it on him, make this work. And I think that LaRue is, ultimately responsible, the captain of the ship. And, but, put the chief mate on it and tell him that he's got to make the lab work and that we're in compliance. That's my take.
Okay, so we've had input from all the boards. I would like to open it up at this time to the public for public comment. Keep in mind that you will have 5 minutes to make any kind of comments. Rochelle, you are going to be the time monitor. And you can go ahead, Rochelle, and start fielding comments from the public.
Unmute your phone.
Sorry about that. First in line, I have Jane Davis. Jane, you have 5 minutes starting now.
Yes, my name is Jane Davis, and I would like to comment on this proposal before the board to cut the laboratory staff from 4 to 2. Last month, Carollo Engineers presented their organizational assessment to the board. As you know, many of the supposed facts that they presented in favor of cutting lab staff have been revealed to be lies. They told you South Tahoe PUD only had 2 lab staff. They have 6 and are presently adding staff to comply with the reporting requirements of TNI. They told you Inland Empire had 1 lab staff. They have 15. They told you only 0.25 FTE was required to prepare SOPs for the new TNI standard. But they didn't tell you that 70% of all wastewater treatment plants in California are hiring an FTE to keep up with the extensive reporting requirements that will be a permanent feature of TNI. They told you TTSA only needed 2.6 FTEs, but they failed to count the lab manager's job in their calculation. They told you that some combination of operators and or outside labs could adequately conduct testing that's currently being done by lab staff. But they neglected to tell you that none of the operators have completed their demonstration of capability, nor did they mention that TTSA missed their reporting deadline with Lahontan just last month because an outside lab failed to return results in a timely manner. And now ELAP has levied a series of violations against TTSA management because they have been attempting to bring, and I quote, pressures and influence that.
I'm sorry, Jane, you're breaking
adversely
up.
And, quote, against the labs. I'm sorry, I'm breaking up. I'll say what I have to say. I would argue that attempting to lay off staff is an example of exactly.
Yeah, Jane, we have a bad connection. We're losing you.
Cited your age is the nerve to appear at this for. Yet,
Jane, I'm sorry, we lost you. We can't hear you.
To appear, management has the nerve at this meeting, you that you let you lay off.
We're going to go to the next comment.
I'm sorry, we lost you.
Let's go to the next public comment.
I will submit my comment.
Submit your comment in writing, Ms. Davis, for the board. And Rochelle, see to it that Jane Davis's comments are entered into the record.
Will do. Yes, Ms. Davis, please email me your comment and I will email it to the board and submit it to the minutes for you. Next, I have Patrick Baird. Patrick, if you would like to go ahead. Patrick, are you still there? Okay, Patrick must have left. Next I have Tracy, if you're still with us. And I don't see Tracy. How about Lauren?
Hi, I'm here.
Okay, Lauren, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks again for the time. Just going to repeat what I had said before. Speaking here today as a concerned Truckee resident, someone with an academic and professional background in public sector management. I urge the board to reconsider its proposed budget plan that includes frontline layoffs in exchange for insulating middle management. Failures within public sector agencies are largely attributed to prioritizing these non-performing middle management positions and transposing the burden of outcome onto the frontline individuals that carry these agencies on their shoulders. You currently employ an already limited staff of dedicated, experienced, and educated individuals who are passionate about the well-being of our community and our environment. The pandemic has certainly had a devastating outcome for our community. The influx of mobile workers has siphoned our public resources without the compensation that we normally get from tourism. We've seen that considerable interruption to tourism, leaving many taxpayers in an unreliable and unsustainable position. These few TTSA employees are the engine of your agency and keep our community moving forward. I would hope that at a time when it is most critical to protect talented workers, to protect the health of our citizens, and to protect the wellness of our environment, you would not weigh in favor of bureaucratic non-performance. It has been proven to fail time and time again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lauren. And next I have Seamus, if you would like to go ahead and make your comment.
Yeah, the name's Seamus.
Seamus, okay.
First comment is for the board and also for upper management is to consider, because we just had the board talk about problems, but ask yourself, when did the problems ensue? When did they start? And when did they get more critical? Well, let's go back and take a look back in time. When did upper management take hold of TTSA and come on board? 3, 4, 5 years ago, give or take. And when did they start opting to train operators to do some of the laboratory work? Last year or so? So when did is there any coincidence between the onset of these problems and the ramping up of problems within the quote unquote lab staff? I would say that it's probably somewhere else to look. You may want to look somewhere else. That's my first comment. Second comment is this. Somebody who I found out about online, his name is Steve or Scott. He's a local journalist, and he made some comments a couple of meetings back, and I started reading the blog that he referred to. It really impacted me because one of the interesting tidbits about that, or one of the coincidences, is that I used to work for the Bureau of Reclamation myself, back when an engineer by the name of Bill Luce, who worked out of the Carson City office, was in the process of negotiating the longest water rights, water quality law or fight that happened in the United States to date. It's one of the longest running that was settled during that time frame. This is back in the 80s, early 80s, late 70s. I just want to impress upon the board. You guys, one of you mentioned that you set policy, the board runs the ship. Well, gentlemen, it's upon you, the board, to understand that policy is at issue right here. And for the upper management of TTSA, it's upon you to make sure that the water quality that you're putting, that the water you're putting back into the lower Truckee or to the Truckee River that goes down to Reno, Sparks, and out to Pyramid Lake is of sufficient quality that you don't incur any personal or corporate liabilities. So whoever the legal beagle is here that's listening in here, he's one of you guys who's on board. I hope you take note of this, because the Paiute Nation and the cities of Reno, the cities of Verdi, the cities of Sparks, they're growing, and they're going to take exception to the fact that these violations are going to come back to haunt not only you and the management at TTSA, but also ultimately affect the water quality and the people who live and reside downstream of where you put your water back into the river. I just want to emphasize that I cannot understate that too much. You guys need, and some of you have been around here long enough to know that. And if you don't, you better go back and read your history, because you'll find out that this will come back to haunt you if you guys don't take steps right now to solve the problems that you're inflicting upon yourselves having to do with your laboratory staff. The laboratory staff not only make sure that the operational effects and management run smoothly at the inside TTSA itself, inside the wastewater treatment plant, but also the water quality that you're sending downstream. You guys better take heart of that, because ultimately what you do here today, what you do in the next couple of months, is going to affect big time what happens. It's heartening to know that some of the directors are having second thoughts about cutting lab staff. Thank you very much, directors. And for the other ones who don't, you better listen up. And the other thing too there's two more comments I'd like to make.
You have one more minute.
Thank you. One is, the directors are appointed. You're not elected. That's going to change. That will change. And number two, I just want to end with this. And it's interesting what you can find on the internet and through connections on the internet. You may want to ask yourselves, why is it that your TTSA ruler here, Mr. Griffin, why did he resign and then get hired by you guys? Why did he have to resign from where he worked and then you guys hired him? That raises a red flag to anybody who does hiring, anybody. With that, thank you for your time.
Next, I have Patrick Baird is still with us and wants to make a comment. Go ahead, Patrick.
Thank you. I'm a former operator of TTSA. I'm currently the operating supervisor for utility district on Donner Summit. My first point is, I think the lab should stay as is. It's definitely necessary for the environment, and definitely TTSA plant I've witnessed and been involved in during my time there multiple times where the lab stepped in to help correct operational changes. And this usually took place back when Dave Robinson was still the operation manager. Second, I'm also an independent operator for multiple small systems within the Truckee and Northern California area. And if the lab, TTSA lab, would expand, I'd be greatly to bring more of my business to them. I've had to work with third-party labs in the last few years, and I can tell you firsthand, they make mistakes. Lab samples have been contaminated, machines have been broken, and it delays your results, and it delays getting your reports out to the state. It's something that you don't need to deal with if you can do it in-house. Thank you very much, and that's all.
Thank you, Patrick. Next, I have Karen. Karen, if you're still with us, if you'd like to make your comment. Karen, I see you're here and muted. Would you still like to make your comment? Okay, Pippin, would you like to make your comment?
Yeah, yes, I would.
Okay.
You guys all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. First, I want to say thanks to the board. I really appreciate this thoughtful discussion that you're having today. I think that's I appreciate the transparency. I know this isn't maybe comfortable for you guys to do in public with everyone, but I really appreciate it. Specifically, I want to talk about some of the Carollo report numbers, and I apologize, I'm an engineer, I'm gonna get in the weeds a little bit, and I'm gonna walk you through a couple things, so if you don't mind, I'd like to walk through the board board packet. But to start out, just as an overall statement, I think that management, LaRue, someone is cherry picking numbers from the report that don't necessarily make sense. So it's starting out looking at page 77 of the packet. If you don't mind, looking at table 4, it shows why the numbers about why the staff was reduced from the original projection of 3.3 to the new projection of 2.6 due to a reduction in whatever a non-daily task. And then there's a footnote for that, right? The rationale in footnote 1 says that Carollo understood these non-daily tasks to be sort of non-conventional tests that happen from time to time. Maybe that kind of like what Patrick said, when people come in and want tests done or that kind of thing. But in reality, non-daily tasks mean tasks that literally don't have to be run every single day. These might be weekly tests, these might be monthly tests, these might be QA, QC, right? Quality assurance, quality control tests that aren't done every single day, but are nonetheless an essential part of the lab doing their work. But tests got cut in this. They cut that down from roughly 2,000 hours. I don't have here I am not following my own directions. Roughly from 2,000 hours to 400 hours or so. And so I think that cut was a mistake, and that TTSA actually needs that 3.3 staff to do the work that's on its permit. Next, I'd like to move, so I'm going to jump around to page 44. Page 44, let me make sure I have this in the right spot on my own. Page 44 is a summary of page 81, sorry about all the numbers, and that essentially, it's under this item 6, subpart 5. So this is where LaRue suggests that, or whoever suggests that TTSA actually hire a full-time employee. They actually say 1 or more full-time employees to work on TNI. So essentially, as I read that, that means that in addition to the requirements of the lab staff, which were either 2.6 or 3.3 for the correct number, Carollo says that they need to hire an additional 1 FTE for TNI. And I will say that if you wanted to jump to page 81, which is where it's actually in the Carollo report, it doesn't, that TNI position should be hired sometime. It says that that position needs to be hired, and I quote, immediately. 1 or more people needs to be hired immediately, which is consistent with what the state said for TNI. Like Jane mentioned, that the staff report for the state says 1 or more full-time employees. And then I want to echo that, this doesn't include the lab, a bunch of the lab director, the management part. And I appreciate what Dan said, that there's two different roles there. There's one which is the providing the data and making sure that all the ELAP and certification is all done correctly, and the other is managing the staff. But based on the notice of violation that ELAP just sent, they made it really clear that that has to be the same person, that you can't separate those two jobs out. So really the lab director is its own separate job, and that makes sense. That's what all the other agencies in the state do. So if I add this up and I look at the numbers, I see that you need 3.3 staff, lab staff, plus 1 more for TNI, and that does not include the lab director. So you need 4 staff or so, and 1 lab director. And so I'm really supportive of this concept of getting an expert in here. Let's get a lab director that knows what they're doing, and they can make these decisions. It looks to me like management got a little overly excited about reducing staff at first glance and didn't actually read the fine print and understand the real staffing requirements in the Carollo report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pippin. Anyone else have a public comment? Pippin was the last one I had on my list. And okay, and Karen is back with us now. Karen, go ahead.
Hi, I'd just like to say something. I'm a lab tech myself, and I've retired just recently after 40 years. And upper management often doesn't understand what is involved with meeting regulations and the requirements for lab testing. often there's a lot of regulations that have to be met, a lot of testing that has to, standards and QCs that have to be run. And running a lab with 2 people is pretty hard to do, especially with no supervisor. And already the lab staff has been reduced 25% with the last manager leaving. And that person has not been replaced. So taking staff that you already have and laying them off doesn't seem like the time to do it, especially when you're already short-staffed. I don't know about the 2.6 FTEs. That doesn't seem like a number that's even feasible, because people do have vacation and leaves, and sometimes somebody's off for a leave for 3 months because of family issues or, you know, COVID. There's issues that come up. So reducing the lab down to that size is a problem that I see could come back to haunt you later. Just my comment. It's I think the lab staff that you have there has been there for at least 8 to 20 years, and they're probably very well trained. So I think you should look within and maybe promote somebody within the lab to be the supervisor, or if you have to look outside. I mean, there definitely is a problem going on, so it needs to be addressed. Just my comment.
Thank you, Karen. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, we've had thorough discussion on this agenda item. We've had input from the public. We've had questions and comments from the board and questions and comments from the staff. Is there any follow-up questions or comments from the management?
Well, there are other items that need to be addressed in here, because we were going to discuss the other recommendations that are going to require board approval, such as the addition of positions. At this point, we're having a discussion. The supplemental action items include the salary schedule, updated job classification updates, and a organizational chart. Those were prepared with the assumption that to be aligned with the staff report for this organizational assessment. So there's no action here. However, there will be required direction from the board when we get to those agenda items. So for this one, we can continue to proceed at the board pleasure to go down to other recommendations, or through the action of the subsequent items, they will resolve and provide direction accordingly. Again, I'm referring to positions such as adding a CMMS GIS position. We can discuss it now, or if you were to include that in the organizational assessment, that would by default define the acceptance or not. I see Blake.
Go ahead, Blake.
Thanks, Dale. I just think we need to bring this topic to some sort of conclusion. And, I think Lane, you really hit it on the nail there. I think that's really well thought out. And whether it's a motion item or not, I think, and I think it probably is appropriate, given that, there was these other options on the table, that we at least direct management to keep the organizational chart as is, which actually includes 4 people, and fill that laboratory director position, recruit and fill that position, and wait for input from that expert who would be the lab director to come back with future recommendations. But at this point, until that lab director position is filled, we don't make any changes. And so, Nick, I don't know whether we need a motion on that or just direction to staff, or I don't know. There was a recommendation from staff to adopt alternative 2. LaRue indicated that a bunch of the follow-up items regarding the org chart and the salary scale were built around lab staffing alternative 2 being adopted. So it seems prudent that we take some type of formal action.
I would like to at this time I'll solicit the rest of the board. It's been recommended by Carrillo and recommended by staff that we take serious look at scenario number 2. Lane, are you given any kind of direction to staff to proceed with the recommendation of Carrillo and staff with scenario number 2?
Well, we had, as I say, I go before you with this, with the recommendation that first thing we do is we hire a director for the lab, because that person then make the decision with staff as far as the amount of FTEs we're going to need, and let the process continue that way. But it goes back to the staff, and it goes back to the lab director, and making those recommendations back to and moving forward. We have a problem. We can't kick the can down the road any longer. Let's take some action and let's get on it. Let's get a lab director. Let's keep the existing personnel so that lab director and staff have time to evaluate the lab as a whole. That's my motion.
Okay, Dan, any further input?
None at this time.
Okay, David?
Yeah, I have a question and a comment. How much outside lab work do we get into our lab, money-wise, and how much could we get? That would be for LaRue.
Sure. Michael, could you provide the details to that? Unfortunately, I don't know off the top of my head.
My understanding of the tests that we do now are for absence and presence, typically in drinking water for a lot of little water districts here in the area. We basically charge enough to cover the cost of the sampling products that are used to facilitate that absence or presence that we can report to the water districts. I don't believe we're making any. We just got it set up basically where it's kind of a help to these districts to be able to bring it here, and we just charge them what it costs to run the sample. So there is no, and I'm not 100% on this, so please don't. I don't have the information right in front of me. I could look that up and come back, and I would not have any idea of what the potential for income would be. And we're a public agency, so I don't know how that all works. We'd have to look into it further.
Okay, I would like that information at some point. And so my comment would be that agreeing with Lane, and let's get somebody hired, as I said before, the chief mate on the ship, and put it to them and get information back from them about what do we need, what is the whole ball of wax. I go back to that report that they didn't really tell us what other lab staffs were. I mean, there was a lot of mix. South Shore provides water and sewer, so it doesn't really equate across the board. So I'm not real clear on that. And I think that we should not reduce staff until we got our act together. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, board members, would it be fair to say at this time that we give LaRue direction to hire either from within or from outside a lab director to analyze and assess what our needs are within the lab? Would that be a fair assumption? Director Buffett?
Yeah, that's my assessment. I think that's a fair assessment of where the board's at.
Okay?
Dale,
And
based
mine
on
too.
that, what I've heard.
Any other doctor input? Blake?
Yeah, that would be accurate, Dale. And I'll just say that, you know, the only alternative that would run in conflict with was alternative 3, where we did outsource the majority of our lab work, and therefore the lab director probably wouldn't need the, you know, characteristics of the lab director that we're going to recruit for. But I didn't see any, you know, interest or expressions of desire to go with alternative 3. So I don't think, I think the job description that we're looking for LaRue to fill is that of a full-fledged lab director, a la our current staffing, or alternative 1 or 2, supervisory responsibility included. So yes.
Okay.
The way I interpret this is when we get to the action item for the organizational assessment, all we really need to do is to change the FTEs for the associated chemist position to 3. Because the direction right now, as I'm understanding it, is to recruit a laboratory director, so that FTE would remain as 1, and the chemist position would be 3, and we get to it at that point. That's where we can amend it and then revisit it at that time. Because there is still a desire to have an organizational adopted, because there's additional factors of positions.
LaRue, I didn't follow you there.
I can explain better when I get to that agenda item.
Okay, so LaRue has his direction to either hire from within or go to the outside for a full-time lab director. Moving on, let's go to item number 3, approval of the classification descriptions. LaRue.
Vicki Lutrano has been working with managers and staff to update the classification descriptions, and I'll let her address this item. Please proceed, Vicki.
Hey, good morning, Director Cox, or President Cox and directors. Regarding this item on the agenda, it encompasses pages 93 through 142 in the board packet. New classification descriptions were created with the classification and compensation study and became effective in January of 2020. For 2 reasons, we are bringing forth amended and new classification descriptions today. First, in an effort to keep descriptions up to date, we have some with amendments. And second, as part of the recommendations of the organizational assessment, there are a few new classification descriptions being proposed. Please note that salaries have been listed next to the job titles as reference only, and a proposed amended salary schedule will follow this agenda item. Also note that I noticed an error on this agenda item page with the listed salary for executive assistant board clerk. The high range of the salary should be $47.5238 per hour, and it is accurately reflected within the following salary schedule, which is a different agenda item. Back to this item, highlights of this agenda item include proposed new job titles of CMMS, GIS technician, and the executive assistant board clerk, and these are based on organizational assessment recommendations. Proposed amended job descriptions include administrative department manager, customer service specialist, electrical and instrumentation supervisor, or E&I supervisor, E&I technician, human resources administrator, inventory control specialist, purchasing agent, and senior engineer. These changes are a mix of organizational assessment recommendations as well as general housekeeping amendments. Management and staff recommend the approval of the classification descriptions with an effective date of January 1st, 2021.
Okay, it's been recommended by staff that we approve the classification description as presented by Vicki. This is all to become effective January the 1st, 2021. Any questions or comments from the board? Go ahead, Blake. Dan?
Thanks, Dale.
Go ahead, Blake.
Yep. One suggestion, and that would be to, on the amended classification descriptions for the administrative department manager, to retitle that position Finance and Administrative Department Manager. That position has been amended to enhance the finance responsibilities of that position. And I think when recruiting for it, we should include finance in its title to encourage folks with that background, not just administrative backgrounds, to apply. That's it.
Thank you. Dan, comment?
Yeah, or a question. So as it relates to the classification descriptions and recommended salary ranges, when we went through the class and comp study about a year ago with Bryce Consulting, they put a lot of time and effort into giving us recommendations on appropriate salary ranges for different positions. Is that where this information came from? Were these recommendations from Bryce Consulting?
Yes, Dan, the recommendation, or I'm sorry, the new classification descriptions for CMMS and the executive assistant, those were both prepared for us by Bryce Consulting. And then secondarily, and again, this will be on the next item regarding salary, but Bryce also prepared the salary data for us. And we have the sheets that Bryce had originally provided during the class and comp process. They used that same data sheet to show us the new data information or new salary information for these two positions. And then additionally, we did have Bryce take a look at any amendments that we made to the other positions, and specifically including the administrative department manager. Bryce did look at the amendments, or actually prepare amendments for us on the administrative department manager, and then also gave us new salary range data for that position.
Okay, so these recommendations are effectively were done with the benefit of the class and comp consulting or consultant that we used a year ago. So this should kind of fit into that overall methodology that we went through quite a lot of time and effort to establish and adopt about a number of months ago. So, okay, I just wanted to make sure this was consistent with that effort.
Okay, and yes, that is correct.
Okay, David, any comments? No comments? Lane, any comment?
If does this take a motion? I'll make the motion that we approve the classification descriptions.
Lane, not yet, but I'll get back to you on that. If all of the directors have had an opportunity to voice their concerns or opinions on this agenda item, I'd like to refer any comments from the public. Any public comment on this agenda item? Rochelle?
I don't have any comments. No comments, unless anyone.
Okay, no comments from the public. At this time, Lane, you want to make a motion to approve the
Classification descriptions, I make that motion.
okay, it's been moved by Lewis. Need a second? Need a second. Come on.
Second.
Go ahead,
Second.
Dan, seconds.
Yep.
Roll call, please.
Director Cox, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure that motion would include with an effective date of January 1, 2021.
That is correct.
Additionally, the administrative manager's title to include finance as proposed by Blake. Just want to confirm that is also part of the action.
Got it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item is approval of the salary schedule. Item number 4.
Vicky Lafrano works with, I'm sorry, Vicky, can you proceed to address that?
Yes, thank you. Again, for those following along in the packet, this encompasses pages 143 through 147. And one of the recommendations of the organizational assessment that was presented at the November Board of Directors meeting included the addition of new job descriptions, amendments to existing job descriptions, and the elimination of a couple of positions. Those amendments have been incorporated into the proposed salary schedule. As it relates to amendments to the salary schedule and to go along with the previous agenda item, a few highlights include the addition of the CMMS, GIS technician, and executive assistant board clerk. The salaries for both of these positions reflect current market data that was provided by Bryce Consulting. Bryce is a consulting firm that was utilized for the class and comp process in 2019 here at TTSA. Data sheets have been attached, which are pages 146 and 147 in the packet that are the same that were utilized in the 2019 study. Amendments of the administrative department manager, customer service specialist, and purchasing agent are included within the salary schedule. As it relates to those positions, the admin manager salary range is being amended to reflect higher education and experience requirements. And the customer service and purchasing agent salaries have been amended to internally align with the accounting technician position, partly due to all positions now reflecting similar educational and experience requirements. Management and staff recommend the approval of the salary schedule with an effective date of January 1st, 2021.
To the presentation from Vicky on the salary schedule. Any comments from the board? Blake, any comments?
No comment.
Director Wilkins?
Yeah, so this is basically dealing with cost of living adjustments, and it's basically keeping our salary schedule current based on the kind of employee compensation and benefit commitments we've made. Is that correct, Vicki?
Yes, it is doing that. It does that on an ongoing basis. It's not really reflecting that at this point, meaning COLAs aren't, there was no COLA applied to these salaries, and there was nothing else applied currently to the existing salaries. More, it was an addition of the two new positions, and then it was the amendment of the salaries of the admin manager, customer service, and purchasing agent. And additionally, and I didn't mention this prior to now, my apologies, it's removing a couple of positions that are also recommended in the organizational assessment, and that would be the removal of the administrative assistant position and the removal of the customer service supervisor. And then actually it also did a couple of other amendments that have happened throughout time during from the last acceptance of the salary schedule till now. Meaning, and specifically, I guess I can state, positions or people have moved out of positions that are in salary schedule A, and therefore it has made that salary schedule A job title unnecessary to continue on the salary plan.
Okay. So this is housekeeping on the new positions, as well as some other things that have happened over the course of the last few months to keep this current. And then when would the COLA adjustments to the salary schedule happen at the end of the fiscal year? So entering, is that when we make that modification? So it would be next July, we would do another update to this salary schedule.
That is correct. Generally speaking, we bring it to you probably in May of each year. Yeah, and in order to incorporate those changes for July 1st implementation date, correct?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Director Lewis. Comments?
Hang on, Ivan.
No comment.
Director Smeltzer, any comments, sir?
Just a question. What is the overall fiscal impact? I don't see a total or a guess.
There has been no guess included, but it would be dependent upon bringing new staffing in, for example, for the CMMS GIS technician and the board clerk, executive assistant board clerk. So while I could probably calculate that really quick, just based on, say, beginning salary or mid-range salary, if you'd like to know that, I can do that really quickly.
Sure.
Okay. All right, give me just a minute.
Thanks.
Okay, at this time, go ahead, Lane.
I got a question. I mean, on these employees that get hired here, we still haven't dealt with the issue of permanent health care. I mean, and a tiered system going forward. You know, and that's just going to cost the district. I don't know how long the district can afford to keep doing that. And we need to address that issue.
If I can address, there was discussion in previous meetings to return back with some information on that, and we do intend to do so in the upcoming months. A lot of our time has been designated to organizational assessment and other matters. So it's not off the radar. We are aware of it, and we will be returning with information.
Okay, we've had comments from all the directors on the salary schedule. Are there any comments or questions from the public? Go ahead, Rochelle.
I have no comments at this time.
Okay, with all of the discussion that has taken place, are there any follow-up questions or comments from the board? Seeing none and hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the salary schedule effective date January the 1st, the year 2021.
I'll make that motion.
Lewis. Need a second. Seconded by Wilkins. No further questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Actually, before we proceed, I think, Vicki, did you have the subsequent data to provide?
I do. Director Smeltzer, so the CMMS position would range between 66,684 to 85,113 annually. The board clerk position would range between 77,459 and 98,841 annually. And the combined numbers for those two ranges between 144,143 to 183,954 annually. So somewhere between those numbers will be the salary cost for those two.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Rochelle,
Roll call,
please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smeltzer,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Item on the agenda is the approval of the organizational chart. This is item number 5.
Vicki, would you please explain the item as we get down to discussion on the laboratory director and the chemist FTEs, I can fill in there as a follow-up from the previous discussion.
Okay. Again, for those following along in the electronic board packet, this encompasses pages 148 through 150. Excuse me. The most recent update to the organizational chart was performed in June of 2020 in order to accurately reflect and account for full-time equivalents or FTE staffing as proposed in the organizational assessment and recommended by agency staff. The organizational chart has been updated. Some of the highlights include, as we've already talked about on the previous two items, are the addition of the CMMS GIS technician, the addition of the executive assistant board clerk, the removal of the customer service supervisor, removal of administrative assistant, update of FTE count for accounting technician, update of FTE count for associate and assistant engineer, update of full-time equivalent count for chemist, and title changes that reflect E and I rather than I and E. Please note that there are two organizational charts included within the packet. One is a red line version of the current organizational chart that shows the changes being proposed, and the second is an updated chart which incorporates the proposed changes. The FTE counts show the approved numbers of FTEs per classification, and as noted and in the previous discussions, it is my understanding that management and staff would recommend approval of the organizational chart with an effective date of January 1st, 2021, with an amendment to the FTEs for chemist position to be 3 rather than 1. And if that is incorrect, LaRue, please correct me at this point.
No, actually, you summarized it perfectly.
And I'm sorry, just to throw in one more thing there, I would also note that you would ask me to, of course, amend the administrative manager title within here to be finance and administrative department manager, as previously directed in one of the other items.
Okay, the presentation of the organizational chart is complete. We have questions. Go ahead, Director Lewis.
I know the charts on FTEs and stuff like that, but whenever we get an organizational chart, I'd like to have legal counsel go from right over to the board. It's not put on here, and he's not an FTE, but I want that where counsel should be reporting to the board as sidebar.
That amendment can be made.
I had an additional question or clarification, which is the laboratory director has the chemist shown beneath them, but there's also that line continues down from the operations manager as well. I don't see that anywhere else where there's a dual chain of command. Is that intentional, or was that just a chart making?
I would say that that is accidental, and I will make sure it gets corrected on the finalized version if you approve this today.
Okay. I'll make a motion to, if we haven't already done that, to adopt the organizational chart with those amendments.
Okay, before we do that, Director Essen, are there any comments from the public? Go ahead, Rochelle.
I have no comments from public.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor from Director Tessin for approval of the organizational chart. We need a second.
I'll second.
It's been seconded by Director Lewis. No
Hey,
further
hey, hey,
or
Dale.
comment?
Hey, Dale, I actually do have a kind of question. So similar to what Blake was just describing for the admin manager, it shows there's an accounting supervisor, with an accounting technician. So with the admin manager position, I just want to make sure I understand it properly. So the accounting supervisor reports to the admin manager. The customer service specialist reports to the admin manager, and the purchasing agent reports to the admin manager. Then we're deleting the admin assistant and the customer service supervisor. So I think that's all clear. What I'm trying to sort out is the net change in total positions. So, because we're deleting some positions, we're adding some positions, and I want to make sure it's clear in my mind. It's really back to Dave's comments earlier on what's the net staffing, what's the net full-time equivalency mod change that happens assuming we adopt this.
Dan, the answer is the net change would be actually 3 FTEs, and my apologies for neglecting to include an associate or assistant engineer in that dollar amount that I provided to Director Smeltzer. I can calculate that very quickly also, but the net would be 3 staff. LaRue, please correct me if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. FTE increase for this year, 1. Accounting technician is 2. GIS technician has 3. Executive assistant clerk has 4. And then there's a deletion of the customer service supervisor, administrative assistant. So we're looking at a net change of just FTEs of positive 2. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. That's so it's basically, this is a net increase of 2 staff from existing is what this approval would constitute.
Correct. Yes.
LaRue, it's 3 unless I'm miscounting. So it's adding the executive assistant, adding an associate or assistant engineer, and adding the GIS technician, also adding the accounting technician, but then removing the admin assistant. So we're netting 3.
Are we also removing the customer service supervisor though?
Oh, yes. Again, yes.
So yeah, I do believe it is a net change of 2 FTEs.
You are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments from the board? Any clarification? Let's have a new motion to approve.
Have Tristan for the motion.
I will
And
amend my, I don't think there's any amendment. I will move to adoption of the organizational chart with the changes we discussed.
And I'll
Okay,
second.
And it's been seconded by Lewis. No further questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smeltzer,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item is item 6. Approval of the updated list shown in your board packet.
For various leaves. Vicki, would you mind addressing this item as well, please?
Yes, for those following along, pages 151 through 157 of the electronic board packet. And the TTSA employee handbook became effective in April of 2020. The policy for Family and Medical Leave Act and California Family Rights Act, also known as FMLA and CFRA respectively, must be amended for required changes to CFRA that became effective or that will become effective January 1st, 2021. Due to new state legislation, there is a significant expansion of CFRA. Currently, all public employers and all private employers with 50 or more employees are required under CFRA to provide up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave to eligible employees for qualifying reasons, including the serious health condition of the employee or employee's family member, and for baby bonding purposes. Eligible employees include those who have worked for the employer for at least 12 months, provided at least 1,250 hours of service in the preceding year, and worked at a facility that employs a minimum of 50 employees in a 75-mile radius. In addition, the state's new Parent Leave Act, which is called California Parental Leave in TTSA's handbook, currently requires employers with between 20 to 49 employees to provide eligible employees up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave to bond with a newborn child or with a newly adopted or newly placed foster child. Beginning January 1st, 2021, a new state law expands the CFRA to require that all employers with 5 or more employees must grant CFRA leave. This effectively eliminates the employee eligibility requirement of 50 miles in a 75-mile radius. The new law broadens the earlier definition of family members to include grandparents, grandchildren, siblings, domestic partners, adult children, and children of domestic partners. The new law requires employers to provide CFRA leave due to a qualifying urgency-related need for military leave, similar to the FMLA requirements. The expanded law also requires that parents who are both employed by the same employer are each individually entitled up to 12 weeks of CFRA leave for baby bonding purposes. So because of the broader protections of the expanded CFRA and the NPLA, or New Parent Leave Act, the New Parent Leave Act is then repealed as of January 1st, 2021. So management and staff recommend the approval of the updated FMLA, CFRA, PDL, PFL, California Parental Leave, and Medical Leave of Absence policies with an effective date of January 1st, 2021. And just to be clear, these amendments are part of our current and existing handbook. I did intend to do other amendments and bring those forth to the board today within the handbook, but time restraints did not allow. So I do intend to bring a handbook amendment within the next few months to the board. But as of right now, because this new law is going into effect January 1st, 2021, I would ask that the board approve this portion of the handbook to be changed.
Okay, everybody has heard the presentation from Vicki on this agenda item. What are your comments, Director Chesson?
No, good job, Vicki. No comments.
Director Smeltzer?
No comment.
Director Wilkins?
Just thanks for keeping, for taking care of these housekeeping items with ever-changing state law and keeping our policies in compliance with them. It's not an easy task because there's things are changing all the time. So I appreciate you staying on top of it, Vicki.
Thank you.
Director Lewis?
Thanks. Just thank you, Vicki, for keeping us in compliance.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments from the board, I'll open it up to comments from the public. Go ahead, Rochelle.
There's no public comment on this item.
With that being said, if there are no further questions or comments from the board on this agenda item, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion Approve.
It's been moved by Director Lewis,
And I'll second.
seconded by Director Stelter. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Tresson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the General Engineering Services Agreement with Carrillo Engineers Incorporated.
Jay, would you mind addressing this agenda item, please?
Yes, no problem. Good morning, directors. So yeah, from time to time, the agency has a need for on-call services with our engineering consultants, where we need advice that we can't otherwise get, et cetera. And so we have existing agreements in place with Jacobs and HDR. And for increased flexibility on this, we'd like to execute a parallel agreement with Carrillo. So this is an on-call general engineering services agreement authorizing up to $50,000 of total fees for the fiscal year. That'd be on a time and materials basis. So, you know, if we don't use it, we don't spend it. So our recommendation is for management, is for the board to authorize management and staff to approve the general engineering service agreement with Carrillo. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Any of the board members?
Yes,
one.
I have one.
Go ahead, David.
All right. I was looking on the indemnification for the general liability, and their limits are 2 million per occurrence. And I just heard that we have 100 million in assets. Is that considered enough, 2 million? If I don't know what they're doing, but if they came in, or any contractor came in and did some horrible damage, do we have another way of recovering that loss?
Dick, do you have any advice there?
Yes, let me cover that question. 2 million for this contract is, in my opinion, sufficient. Frankly, it's a minimum number, but for the type of work contemplated by Carrillo under this agreement, it could be sufficient. This insurance is a belts and suspenders insurance on top of the substantial insurance coverage the agency already has. So this would come in first, and then it would be backed up by the agency's own insurance.
Okay, thanks. That's what I was asking. There would be another source.
Yes.
Okay. Good. I'm happy.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
One, Dale. So Jay, these on-call agreements, they basically allow staff, when you've got technical questions that may be outside of your direct area of expertise, to get resources quickly to get those questions answered and maintain progress on various projects and activities without having to, delay productivity and have to check in with the board every time you may need a relatively small contract to get some of those engineering services. Is that effectively what this contract is providing?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's for these kind of one-off little questions we have that we have a problem on the plant or something, and maybe something needs a little structural advice, from a structural engineer, and it's not cost effective for the agency to have a structural engineer on site, onto our paid payroll. So it's ability for us to reach out and tap one of our consultants for that structural advice. That's one example. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Blake.
So with a $50,000 not to exceed amount, is there, I can see, Jay, you gave the one-off questions. but is there a project that is below 50 but above just a, an hour of their time at which the board would still be brought in? There's a certain limit that staff has before board approval is required, right? Or does this give you guys authorization to, do contracts with them, including something that's effectively $50,000?
Yeah, LaRue, is that something you can address? I know you have a limit, I think, on what you're able to approve.
Yeah, I do not recall what the limit on for contracts with professional services right now, but this agreement does give staff the flexibility to have multiple scopes of work equaling $50,000 or one scope of project equaling $50,000. Did I answer that?
Right. So it sounds like we're authorizing, regardless of the limit that you have, you were effectively giving authorization to do a project up to $50,000, but there's no specific project that you've defined here. You're saying this is purely for the remaining 6 months of the year, just giving you guys flexibility. Although you already have existing contracts, are they also for 50,000 with CH2M Hill and with HDR?
Yes, they are. And in general, the bigger projects we do come to the board with, like on a task order based project. So, I'd say the more typical approach is that, for the large chunks, we would go to the board with, but that this is more either for an on-call or for something, for example, that where the timeline is ongoing, and you need advice, a few hours of somebody's time, every so often. Is there anything you want to add onto that, LaRue?
I think you nailed it. The intent of these contracts is to get that immediate support. And it's usually smaller projects. When there are larger projects with bigger budgets, those are typically brought towards the board. Right now, I would anticipate that they would have some billable hours based on some follow-up with organizational assessment. As the agency proceeds to do some more follow-up work on perhaps pre-treatment, we would utilize their services then as needed. Like Jared stated, if there's a large project, we would bring that as a separate independent project. If you would like to amend this agreement to have instance with a maximum, we can implement that as well.
No, I'm okay with it as it is.
Okay, any other further questions or comments in regards to our services agreement? Seeing none, hearing none, any comments from the public? Rochelle.
Yes, Jane Davis would like to make a public comment on this item.
Yes, my name is Jane Davis, and I would strongly urge this board not to reward Carollo engineers for their shoddy, unprofessional lies that they came in front of this board and told last month. They were worried about retribution, and instead you propose to reward them. I think that's really an unacceptable use of ratepayer money. Thank you.
That is the only public comment that I have in my list, and there are no others.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments from the board, seeing none and hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the general engineering services agreement. Need a motion?
I'll make that motion.
It's been moved by Wilkins, second.
I'll second.
Seconded by Smeltzer. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins?
Yes.
Smelser?
Yes.
Director Tresson?
Yes.
Director Lewis? Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item is operations. What's up, Mike?
Good morning, Board. President Cox. The Operations Department report for November, on December 2016. It was reported to me by Chief Plant Operator that all plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month. The operations report, overall, the plant performed well through the month. Just wanted to bring up again that the well 31 has had a pH range of 6.5 to 6.6 over the past 5 weeks, with the addition of caustic. Inspected and added media to as needed to final effluent filters number 1 and 2. Operators continue to train with the chemists for the weekend laboratory testing. Laboratory report, staff performed necessary laboratory testing per WDR requirements and operational needs for the month. Laboratory director has determined the operators have had sufficient training and are ready to perform the initial demonstration of capability for the following tests: dissolved oxygen, turbidity, and temperature. And staff continue to train operators for the MPN testing. We have 8 work orders that were completed, 7 pending. Average daily flows for the month was 2.8 MGD per day. And then you can see that the effluent limitation description, the discharge requirements were met for the month. One other thing that I did want to, that did come to, that we received on Monday, that this kind of goes back to the lab report. The State Water Resources Control Board has sent us a notice of violation in order to correct for the for ELAP purposes for the laboratory. We have had 4 noted violations and 2 method deviations per their visit to the agency. I want to say it was almost 2 months ago now. And then we have required corrective actions. And the required corrective actions are due by January 18th of 2021. I'm bringing this, it's not in the board packet because it did just arrive on Monday, but I did want to bring it up and open it up for any discussion or any questions from the board at this time.
Go ahead, Lane.
My question is, on those corrective actions, are all of those corrective actions, when you'll submit those back to ELAP, when will we get a confirmation that that is good enough for them?
We have to submit by January 18th, but I don't know what their time frame would be to get back to us. We anticipated that the violations or notice of violations in order to correct would have come out a little sooner than it did. So it's hard to say for sure how much time will pass before we'll see that.
Okay. Do we have any idea? Is there any fine associated with that, or just corrective actions?
Just corrective actions.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have one.
Go ahead, David.
All right. Will we make the January 18th deadline?
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Anyone else for Mike?
Yeah, Dale. So thanks for forwarding that that notice of violation over to us yesterday afternoon, LaRue. It looked like it was focused on kind of procedure, laboratory testing procedures, housekeeping type items within the lab. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
So it was basically the State Water Resources Control Board personnel who have regulatory authority over us and have authority over basically making sure that our lab is functioning within the proper procedures, came in, did a review of the lab, found out that we weren't operating within all proper procedures, pointed out where those deficiencies were, and now is asking us how we intend to correct them. That's basically what's going on here?
That is a fair statement, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and this again is, as we reported before, this was considered an inspection by the ELAP division of the State Water Resources Control Board, which is the Environmental Laboratory Protection Agency, accredited agency, sorry. And so this is just their follow-up from that investigation that we had already reported to you guys had taken place.
Mike, have we ever experienced an inspection from ELAP in your history with TTSA or known history?
Yes, we have. It was approximately about 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, we had an issue with our water testing. The presence and absence tests was reported inaccurately through our lab. And those get reported to the health department when they come through with a presence. And so then, boiling water, cease and desist use of water acts can happen from that. And we found out that it was reported inaccurately. So at that time, that prompted ELAP to come in and do more of an inspection like this, where they came in unannounced and showed up, started asking questions, and subsequently that ended up we lost our accreditation to run those tests for a certain period of time. We had to do new demonstrations of capabilities. We had to do further training, and basically it was a notice of violation in order to correct. And I think it was actually a little bit more than that. But we went through the process kind of like this and corrected the action, and were able to continue those samples for the districts after we took those corrective actions.
Thanks, Mike.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Mike? I have one question, Mike. Would it be fair to say that if we would have had a lab director in the position to field questions or comments and have jurisdiction and direct authority over the lab, that this letter would have never been generated?
I don't think that would be an accurate assessment if ELAP had come in and done this inspection, regardless of whether a laboratory, because we did have a laboratory director in place at the time. But for ELAP purposes. And I think what you're asking maybe is if we would have had that laboratory director in position of the full supervisory responsibility, would that have happened? Some of these violations date back to 2017, when we did have a full-time supervisory laboratory director in place. So I hope I'm answering your question correctly. I don't think that would be accurate, that if that person would have been in place, that we still wouldn't have had these violations. These should have been corrected before, and we're not.
Okay, thank you very much, Mike. Any further questions for Mike before we move on? We will take public comment at the end of the operations reports. Next item would be Richard Puente, Maintenance Manager. How's it going, Richard?
Going good, President Cox. Good morning, President Cox and Board of Directors. For the month of November, a large amount of maintenance's staff time was focused on the admin building remodel, moving furniture and such. We also dedicated a large amount of time to just winter prep, snow blowers, et cetera, for the upcoming winter season. We were also able to continue on our project on the BNR influent pump VFDs. We completed number 2, and as of November started the 3rd one, and as of yesterday that one was completed. So you'll see a final report on that project next month. We also replaced another sludge cake transfer VFD. We've been doing a lot of VFDs throughout this year. With the assistance of operations, taking some of the equipment offline, we're able to do some long outstanding repairs on side 1 O2 basin. We also started on various safety audit work orders, such as speed bumps, signage, and other minor safety items that were identified when we did our safety walk. As far as work orders completed, mechanical was 66, our fleet maintenance 15, E&I 24. And as I mentioned last month, you'll see a trend up for mechanical because of the safety audits. We're currently carrying a backlog of 122. Fleet, we're seeing 23, and E&I 51. So we'll see a peak on those, and they should decrease over the next couple months. That sums up my report. Open to any questions.
Any questions for Richard? Seeing none and hearing none. Moving on to Jay. What's up, Jay Parker?
Morning, directors again. In the month of November, the engineering department juggled a long list of projects here. I'm happy to elaborate on any of these instead of going through each one. Are there any questions on any of these projects listed?
No questions or comments for Jay? Moving on. What's up, Bob?
Good morning, members of the board. The IT department has been assisting in the moving back of the departments into their rooms after the completion of the admin building remodel project. We assisted the E&I department in getting the 2nd and 3rd of 3 BNR influent pumps, VFDs installed and integrated into our plant control system. As of yesterday, all 3 of them are running in auto, and they seem to be running very well. In the dewatering building, E&I upgraded also the VFD for the centrifuge, for our centrifuge number 1, and we are currently in the final stages of integrating that drive into our plant control system. And we received an acceptance from our leading candidate for the position of IT specialist, and he will be starting on January 25th. That's it. Any more questions?
Go ahead, Lane.
Yeah, Bob, that IT specialist, my question, cybersecurity, where are we?
We're going to be, we're kind of waiting for the organizational assessment to kind of go through, because that's going to be part of the master plan for that.
Okay, do you think we can do that in-house or contract out?
Well, according to the organizational assessment, that is slated right now to be out, contracted out.
Okay, great. Keep moving on it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving along. What's up, Rochelle? Everything okay?
Everything is going well. We are all moved back in with the help of the maintenance department, and engineering got the contractors to move the project right along, and the office is beautiful, fresh and new, and everything is running smoothly. The accounting department is winding down on the audit, and we should have a final report, if not in January, the beginning of February. We should have that for the board, and all is going well. And if you don't have any questions for me, that's all I have.
Any questions for Rochelle?
Okay.
Seeing none and hearing none, what about the general manager? What's up?
Did you want to take public comment on the department reports? or-
Not yet.
Okay. I just wanted to add a couple things to the general manager report. The agency, in lieu of having their annual employee appreciation dinner at either a restaurant in Reno or Truckee, due to COVID, we have changed those plans to have two luncheons via food truck. We had one scheduled yesterday. Unfortunately, because of the snow, the food truck pulled out, so we were able to provide pizzas for everybody. The next one is going to be held just before the new year. So it's good that we're able to show staff our appreciation for their efforts there. As everybody stated, we are back into the administrative building. Want to make sure everybody's aware that there's a lot of help and assistance that needs to be acknowledged. The engineering department did a great job with the design, with the contract administration, so kudos to them. Rochelle for picking the colors. She was the one that went through them. So I think they went very well. Thank you very much, Rochelle. And maintenance and IT, they did a lot of the heavy lifting because they had to move all the equipment out, move everything back in, come in, change all the plates, and make sure all the wiring was in there. So kudos to everybody. Everybody did a great job on that. It does look good, and I can't wait till you guys come get back in, take a look at it. I think you'll be very pleased with it. Other than that, for any questions, that'll conclude the general manager's report.
Any questions for the GM?
Yeah, one question, Dale, as it relates to the kind of the new restrictions that are coming into place around COVID, LaRue, what changes have we had to make in terms of the workplace to comply with those?
We have been sort of complying with them anyway. The only big restriction change to us is that now if you're in the building together, in a room together, everybody has to wear a mask. That's why Dale and I are wearing masks. Previously, if we were 6 feet apart, we would have taken our masks off. We still have staff that are working on site and off site through teleworking. Most of the people have the ability to come in to work in their office. Those that can, those are in here. Those that can't, they are teleworking, and we're rotating shifts there. So there hasn't been much change since for our departure from the administration building.
And then all of our staff have been designated as essential workers as well.
Correct.
Okay, if there are no further questions or comments on the operations report or the general manager's report, I'll open up to any comments from the public on operations or GM report. Go ahead, Rochelle.
The only comment we have is from Pippin Mater.
Great, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Thanks, board. I want to thank you again. I really appreciate this continued discussion. I did want to talk a little bit about the ELAP notice of violation document and make sure that there's some things that were clear. One is that, there was some procedural findings about SOPs and what tables were in SOPs and whatever, and then some things about the Orgus charts. But the meat of it from my perspective was really this, that operators have to be, anyone working in the lab has to be under the direct supervision of the lab manager. And that means not just for ELAP purposes, but for sort of like regular HR purposes for that portion of their time. So I guess I wanted to make that clear that is how I think it's written pretty plainly. And that is what the requirement is. There's also a requirement in here that say, that there's clearly ELAP has some concerns, and one of their requirements is a policy that ensures that the laboratory management and all personnel who work in the laboratory are free from any undue internal or external commercial, financial, and other pressures and influences, blah, 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 that may affect the quality of their work. So and this has to be provided by the 18th. So I guess that seems like a pretty big deal to me, that basically there has to be a policy that's signed off by management that says we won't try to affect lab results, implying that they thought that is something that needs to be corrected. And also I wanted to point out that at the end, that you ask about fines, and certainly there aren't any, but it does say that failure to comply with these requirements may result in further enforcement action, civil penalties, suspensions, and revocation of the ELAP accreditation. So, they're taking this pretty seriously. Clearly, they didn't give you a lot of time to do this, and that ELAP kind of gives you a one chance to succeed. And if you don't, the next time, then they come in. Historically, they've come in with pretty definitive action at that point. And then I just want to let you guys know that this gets a little personal for me. So generally, I try to keep my comments professional and not, but right at the moment, I am going to speak as Laura's spouse. And Laura, for all of you that don't know, was the previous lab director. And I will say that this document is, the previous lab director Laura did make recommendations that weren't in line with what management wanted and what the Carollo report wanted as related to staffing, and that she got formally disciplined for disagreeing with management on this. And now this ELAP report, she wanted essentially exactly what the ELAP report says you have to have, which is that to be responsible for the results that the lab creates, you have to be the manager of the person, at least for the amount of time they're in the lab. You have to be directly supervising the person that is doing that work. And that would imply that including something on their annual evaluation or something, right, changes their duty statement to say that for the fraction of the time they're working in the lab, they work under the direction of the lab director. And that is exactly what ELAP came back and said, that they have to be that. So it's a little bit of validation. It's a little bit, from my perspective, bittersweet, because that, that concern was the driving force for her deciding to move on. So I just wanted to let you know that is right. It's pretty personal to me. I also want to just point out, and it's just, again, like, this is a little personal, not so much as professional as I'd like to be often, but the drinking water accreditation issue that did happen when my wife was out on maternity leave. So that is, was she the lab director? Yes, sort of. Was she in the office? No, she was not. So that's really my comment on these. And I will say that this pertains to how you move forward. I think it's really important that the future lab director gets to provide their input directly to the board, and that there's not a filter involved, so that this kind of confusion or miscommunication or bias doesn't get translated through in the future. Thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment, Rochelle?
There is no other public comment, sir.
Thank you very much. If there is nothing else to be brought before this December the 16th, the year 2020 board meeting, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn to closed session. It's been moved by Smeltzer.
Oh, we have director comments.
Director. Oh, I'm sorry.
Director comments, yes.
Director comments, I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
Oh, looks like he's muted. Hang on. There you
All
go.
right, now I'm back in the real world. Yeah, I wanted to let people know that John Collins, probably some of you know this already, is retiring as of January 1st. He's our general manager here at Alpine Springs County Water District. And we've hired a new gentleman, Joe Mueller. He looks good to me, and the board kind of likes him, and he's going to be starting on the 1st of the year. And you might know his wife is the town manager in Truckee, so he's going to be pretty local. He comes from Central California on the coast there, where he was working before. We think we got a good one. John Collins, we hate to see him go, but he only signed on for 2 years, and he was here 15 and a half. So, but we hate to see him go, but he's ready to retire. Done.
Okay, Lane, any comments?
Yeah, just another comment that we don't lose sight on the lifetime health benefits as far as coming back to the board, because if we are going to be hiring new employees, let's have a tiered system. We can't take something away from the existing employees, but we certainly could put in effect that for the new employees that are being hired. So let's not wait too long on it. Thank you.
Wilkins,
No comments. Thank you.
Blake,
Just for those staff that we won't see into the new year, happy holidays to everybody. Thanks for all your hard work. You know, LaRue, do we get an invite to the food truck? Just kidding. Enjoy that, and see you guys next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, thank you, everyone. I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Been moved by Blake.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Trisson,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved. Meeting
Meeting
adjourned.
adjourned.
We should adjourn for the closed session in 10 minutes. Would that be acceptable for the board?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My God.